On a quiet afternoon, Mel Gibson sat at a cafe when a 13-year-old homeless girl asked, "Do you know who Jesus Christ is?" What followed was a profound conversation about forgiveness, redemption, and second chances. As Mel shared his own struggles and faith, the girl began to question if she could ever start over. This powerful exchange will make you rethink the true meaning of hope and belief. Welcome to Prime Chronicles. A young girl searching for hope, a Hollywood icon with a story to tell. This unforgettable encounter will stay with you forever. The late afternoon sun cast a soft golden glow over the bustling streets of Santa Monica, filling the air with warmth that seemed to blanket the world in a moment of calm. Tucked between a small thrift store and a laundromat, a modest cafe sat quietly, its wooden chairs inviting passersby to rest. Mel Gibson, the legendary Hollywood actor, sat alone at a corner table. His sunglasses were perched low on his nose, his plain navy t-shirt and faded jeans blending in with the locals. He was just another face in the crowd, enjoying a rare moment of solitude. But peace is rarely interrupted, especially in a city like this. A figure emerged from the shadows, disrupting the stillness of the moment. A young girl, no older than 13, barefoot and clutching a tattered backpack, made her way toward him. Her messy brown hair framed a face that seemed to carry the weight of the world. She hesitated just a few feet from him, eyes darting around nervously, unsure whether to speak or simply walk away. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft yet steady, breaking through the noise of the busy street. Mel glanced up, brow furrowing slightly in surprise at the girl's sudden approach. She shifted uncomfortably, her fingers fidgeting with the frayed strap of her worn-out bag. Do you know who Jesus Christ is?" The question hit Mel like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the hum of the world around them. Time seemed to slow as his hand hovered just above the coffee cup, his eyes locking onto hers. There was something in her gaze, a mix of innocence and exhaustion, that told him this was no casual question. She wasn't just asking out of curiosity, she was seeking something deeper. Mel paused, the world around him fading into the background. Finally, he set the coffee cup down gently and met her eyes. "Why do you ask?" His voice was calm, but his words were filled with an unmistakable curiosity. The girl shrugged, shifting from one foot to the other. "People talk about him, I don't know who he is, do you?" Before he could respond, something about her expression stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't just a question, it was a plea, a silent cry for something more. The weight of her words hung in the air like an invisible thread pulling him in. Mel leaned back slightly, interlocking his fingers as he studied her. She was small, fragile even, standing there as if the world was too much for her to bear. Her shoulders were slumped, her body weighed down by invisible burdens. "Yeah," he finally said, his voice steady but thoughtful. "I know him." The girl's eyes flickered, hope, maybe, or curiosity, before she quickly masked it with an almost practiced indifference. She hugged her backpack tighter to her chest and tilted her head slightly. "What's he like?" Her voice held a quiet intensity, as if the answer she was about to hear could change everything. Mel was taken aback by the simplicity and the depth of her question. He glanced around, noticing a few passersby slowing their pace, pretending not to eavesdrop on the unexpected conversation. The cafe patio seemed to shrink in size, the world around them narrowing. He gestured to the empty chair across from him, offering it to the girl. "You want to sit?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated, her eyes flickering to the chair and then back to him. It was clear she was weighing her options, unsure whether this was an invitation or a trap. But, after a moment of silence, she shuffled forward and perched on the edge of the seat, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. "Look," Mel began, his voice softening, "I'm not a preacher or anything, but for me, Jesus is someone who doesn't give up on you. No matter how messed up things get, he's all about forgiveness, about starting over even when you think it's too late." The girl looked down at the table, her finger tracing invisible lines across its surface. "Starting over, huh?" she muttered, almost as if she were speaking to herself. Mel leaned forward slightly. "Yeah, starting over. You ever feel like you need that?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, her gaze remained fixed on her hands, her lips pressed tightly together. "Sometimes," she admitted in a small voice, "but I don't think it works for people like me." The weight of her words hung in the air, but Mel didn't let them sit for long. His response was swift, cutting through her doubt like a guiding light in the dark. "Why not?" His voice was firm yet compassionate. The girl shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I've done bad things, stuff I'm not proud of. People don't look at someone like me and think I deserve a fresh start." Mel let her words sink in, his expression softening but growing more serious. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping gently on the edge of the table. "You know," he said quietly, his tone almost a whisper, "I used to think like that too." Her eyes snapped up to meet his, a flicker of disbelief in them. "You?" she asked, her voice full of surprise. "Yeah, me," Mel replied, offering a humorless chuckle. "I've made mistakes, big ones, hurt people I cared about. There were times when I thought I'd never get out of the hole I dug for myself. But I realized something. It's not about deserving grace. Nobody deserves it. That's what makes it grace." The girl frowned slightly, her brow furrowed in confusion, as if the concept was just out of reach. "So you just got forgiven just like that?" she asked skeptically. "It wasn't that simple," Mel admitted, his voice lowering. "It took time, a lot of time, and a lot of hard work. I had to face things about myself I didn't want to see. I had to ask for forgiveness, not just from God, but from the people I hurt. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy, but it was worth it." The girl listened intently now, her earlier skepticism fading. There was something in his words that resonated with her, something raw and unpolished that felt real. "What made you want to change?" she asked, her voice almost hesitant. Mel paused, his eyes drifting toward the horizon as he gathered his thoughts. "I hit rock bottom," he said finally. "When you're at the bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up. But you can't do it alone. That's something I had to learn." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She didn't fully understand them yet, but she was beginning to. Before she could respond, a soft murmur of voices broke the moment. A small crowd had begun to gather nearby, drawn by the quiet intimacy of the conversation. An older woman carrying groceries, a couple holding hands, and a man in a gray suit had stopped to listen, their curious eyes flicking between Mel and the girl. Mel noticed the crowd but didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, his focus unwavering. "You see," he continued, as if speaking only to the girl, "sometimes, when you think no one's watching, that's when life surprises you. People notice things. They notice moments like this." The girl glanced over her shoulder at the small group, her face hardening with a hint of bitterness. "They're just being nosy," she muttered. "Maybe," Mel shrugged lightly, "or maybe they're looking for something, just like you are. Hope, meaning, a reason to believe things can get better." The girl stared at him, the edge of her skepticism beginning to fade. "Do you really think things can get better for anyone?" she asked, her voice quiet, but filled with the weight of her uncertainty. "I don't think," Mel replied firmly. "I know." A woman from the crowd stepped forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Excuse me," she asked shyly, clutching her grocery bag. "Are you talking about faith?" Mel turned to her, offering a small nod. "We are." "Faith," the woman repeated, her voice hesitant. "Faith," Mel affirmed. "It can help you climb out of some pretty deep holes." The woman's face softened, a faint glimmer of understanding crossing her features. "I needed to hear that today," she said quietly, almost to herself. The girl, watching the exchange, seemed to relax slightly. The presence of others, their shared vulnerability, made her feel a little less alone. "So what if you don't know where to start? What do you do?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Mel met her gaze, his voice calm and reassuring. "You start where you are, with what you have. Even if it's just a question, that's enough." But the girl didn't respond immediately. She sat there, quietly tracing the edge of the table with her fingers, as if weighing whether to believe his words or retreat back into the safety of her doubts. "Have you ever been so lost that you couldn't even see the way out?" she asked after a long pause. "Like it's not even there?" Mel's face softened, a shadow of pain crossing his expression. He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I've been there. There were nights when I felt like I'd never find my way back, like no one would care if I didn't." The girl swallowed hard, her eyes dropping to her lap. "That's how I feel all the time." For a moment, the noise of the world faded away, and the two of them were the only ones left in the universe. Mel leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "You're wrong," he said. "You may not see it now, but there are people who care. And even if it's just one person, sometimes that's enough to pull you back." Her gaze lifted, her eyes meeting his. There was vulnerability there now, a crack in the armor she had worn for so long. "How do you know?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mel hesitated, his hand brushing against the edge of his coffee cup. "Because I've lived it," he said. "There was a time when I thought I'd lost everything. My career, my family, my dignity. But someone believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, and that's what saved me." The girl's brow furrowed, her mind racing. "Who was it?" she asked, voice trembling. Mel smiled faintly. "A friend," he said simply. "Someone who didn't give up on me, even when I gave up on myself." The girl looked at him with wide eyes, as if trying to comprehend the enormity of his words. But before she could speak, a man in the crowd interrupted, breaking the spell. "Sounds like you've been through a lot," the man said, his voice filled with respect. Mel nodded, glancing at the gathering crowd. "We all go through a lot," he said. "But it's not about what happens to us, it's about how we choose to respond. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you." As the words left his mouth, the girl's eyes filled with tears, her walls crumbling in a way that felt both terrifying and freeing. She wiped them away quickly with the sleeve of her oversized hoodie. "What if you're too broken to fix?" she asked, her voice cracking. "What if it's just too late?" Mel's expression softened, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "It's never too late," he said firmly. "Not for you, not for anyone. The cracks, the breaks, they're part of your story. They don't define you. What defines you is what you do next." The girl shook her head, her fingers tightening around the frayed strap of her backpack. "You don't know what it's like," she said, her voice trembling. "Being invisible, like you don't matter, like no one sees you." Mel leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "I see you," he said, his voice steady. "And you matter. You matter more than you know." The girl's breath hitched in her chest, and for a moment it seemed like she might bolt. But something in his words, something in the way he said them, kept her rooted to the chair. Slowly she looked down at her hands and asked, her voice shaking, "What do I do? How do I start?" Mel reached into his pocket, pulling out a small folded piece of paper. He placed it gently on the table between them. "There's a shelter a few blocks from here," he said. "They can help you get back on your feet. It's not easy, but it's a start. And if you ever need someone to talk to..." He scribbled something on the back of the paper, a phone number. "You call me, okay?" The girl stared at the paper, her fingers hesitating before picking it up. "You'd really help me?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Absolutely," Mel replied without hesitation. "Because someone helped me when I needed it, and now it's my turn to do the same." The girl's lips quivered as she clutched the paper tightly. For the first time, there was a spark of hope in her eyes, a flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible as she thought. But before she could say anything more, the voice of a man in the crowd interrupted, breaking the moment but not the impact of what had just unfolded. "Sounds like you've been through a lot," the man said, his tone a mix of awe and respect. Mel nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "We all go through a lot, but sometimes it's the small moments that matter the most." He looked at the girl, offering her a warm smile. "That's what it's all about." The crowd slowly began to disperse as the girl, still clutching the paper, glanced back at Mel one last time. As she walked away, her step seemed a little less uncertain, a little more deliberate. Maybe it was the spark of hope, or maybe it was something else, but something had changed. The weight of her past had lightened just a bit. As Mel sat back in his chair, he couldn't help but feel a little lighter too. He had given her a chance, a small piece of hope, and sometimes that's all it takes. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. You never know who needs a little light in their life. Be that light for someone. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories that remind us of the power of kindness, faith, and human connection. Because in the end, these moments are what truly make a difference.